Okay, so we will see how a React application with Node works. So this is a simple web application where we store the details of a student. Okay, the name, email ID, contact number, and here we have an option to update the data, delete the data. Okay, so this comes when I click localhost 3000. When I click it, so it refreshes and I get this data. Okay. Now we will see how this works. Okay. In a React application, how this works. Okay. So this application is here. Okay. So here I started the React application. So in the Crud operation folder, client. Okay. In the client folder, I did a npm start. So when I did a npm start, it started a server and the server is listening on 3000, localhost 3000. So this basically starts our React application and a web server listens on localhost 3000. Okay. So when we type this localhost 3000, this browser sends a HTTP request to this React server, which is running here. Okay, so we get a HTTP request to the React server. So in the React application, what we do, first we will see. We will just going to see the flow, what happens when you type this HTTP request. Okay, how these details and all coming, that is what we are going to see. Okay, so now we got the request, the React got this request. So in the React application, this is the React application. In the public, there is one file called index.html. So this is the file which will be sent back to the sent back as a reply to the HTTP request. Okay. So in this index.html file, there is a in the body there is one div element and its ID is root. Okay. So this is what we are going to send, but there is no content here, but we are able to see a lot of information here. Now, how this information comes, we will see now. So, what we are going to do is, we are going to put our HTML content here. Okay. Now, how we are going to do it? So, this will be sent as a response. Before sending this as a response, the React will run the index.js file, which is there in the source. Okay. So, this file will get executed. So, in this file, what we are doing is, we are using the document object and getting that element root, which is there in the index.html file. And that element root, we are going to put our HTML content in this element root here. Right? So we are getting this, we are creating, this is the syntax for this, we are getting the element root and then using the React DOM, okay, which is imported here, we are creating a root. Okay. So this root basically will refer to this ID. In this root, we are rendering. Rendering is just putting our HTML content in this. So what we are rendering? We are rendering this app component. This app is a functional component which is there defined in another app.js file. Okay, basically we are invoking this app component here. So this app component is going to give us an HTML content, and that HTML content is what we are going to render in this ID root. Okay, so now in the app.js, let's see what is happening. So in app.js, here basically, see this browse router, route, these tags are available in this React router DOM. Okay, once you import it, what we need to do is we have to define routes, right? If it is a home route, like this is the home route, right? This is the home route, and for add contact, okay, for this route what function has to call, for home route what is the function has to call, for updating a particular ID what function has to call. Okay, so you for this route, right, suppose I type here add contact, right, it's here. If I click add contact, I'm getting this page. It's because this HTTP request comes to the React server, it comes here, and then For we are already mentioned that for this route call this function. So this add edit function will be called, and this add edit function gives us this content. When I do this, basically I'm getting a different content because this is a home route. This home function is called, and this home function is giving us this content. Okay, so till now HTTP request reached the React server, and then the React server invoked this index.js. Index.js app function is invoked, and in the app function we have defined the routes like this, and the corresponding route function will be getting called. So in our case, this home function will be called. Again, home is a functional component which is there defined in home.js, which is there in the pages. Okay, let's go to home.js. Okay, so in the home.js, the home function will get called. Okay, first we have a state variable. The purpose of state variable in a functional component is whenever a state variable is changed, the component. Okay, so if you change the data, the component is going to be called, and the component will completely re-render. Re-render means it will be called again. The rendering will happen again. Okay, so here what we have, basically we have on data, this is a state variable, and we have one async function load data. Okay, and we have a use effect. Okay, and we have a delete contact function is that. So this return function, right? This is what will be getting. This what is actually returns our HTML content. Okay, from where we called from this app.js, right? So our HTML content will be returned here, and this in fact will return the HTML content to our index.js, and index.js will put our HTML content in that div root id tag. Okay, so now we will see what is happening here. So first thing what will happen is, okay, this use effect will get called, this rendering will happen, and then this return will happen, and then this use effect function will get called. This use effect function basically it calls a load data function. What the load data function does? The load data function it creates and it sends an HTTP request to localhost 5000/home. So this AXOS is a module used to send HTTP request. Okay, and we are sending a get HTTP request. Okay, and this is a URL. So initially the request came to 3000, the HTTP request came to us, came to the React server, and the React server while processing it, it is again sending a HTTP request to 5000. So there is another web server running in 5000. So this is the client folder, we started this web server. So in another folder, in CRUD operation server folder, we started a server. And this server is listening on 5000 port number. Okay, so now this HTTP request will come to this backend server because we need to get this data. This data is available only in the database. So we have to transfer this request to the backend server so that the backend server can collect this data and give it back to us. So we are sending this HTTP request. So when the HTTP request goes here, let's come to the backend server part. Okay, so here is on index.js. So this is the server part here. Okay, so for /home, this is a node, right? This is basically you use Express. In backend we use Express, right? So we require Express, and then we use that app.get home, right? So for this route, this function will get called. We already told Express that for this route, call this function. App is what? App is nothing but our Express. So app.get for this route, call this function is we already implemented Express. So when We send a HTTP request. First, this HTTP request comes to Express, and to Express we already told /home calls this function. So this function will get called. So in this function, what you are doing? Select star from contact. So in this table, you are selecting everything, okay? And then you are doing a query for this SQL query. And the result will be available here. And this result we are sending as a response, okay? This response results, right? We are that response dot data, right? That we are setting in this state variable. So we are whatever response we are getting in the HTTP, that data we are setting it here. So the state variable is changed. Once the state variable is changed, the component will re-render. Right? This function will be called again. So what happened? It will come here. Okay. And this HTML code will be executed. This HTML code will be returned. Okay. So what happens? Basically, we are creating a button. The button name is add contact. Okay. See, this button is created, add contact. Okay. So when you click that button, what will happen? We are linking to this route. So when you click this button, this route will be called. For this route, what we did? For this route, this is the function we have given. So this function will be called when you click that button. Okay. So this is one thing. And then for the table, we are defining table head. What is that? Number, name, email ID, row. All these things we are defining. So here you get the number, name, email ID, contact, action. All these things are displayed here. Next, we need to populate this one by one, right? All the data we have to populate one by one. All the data we collected from the database is available in our state variable data, because state data we have called this function. Our state variable will be filled with the data we got from the HTTP response. Okay, so here what you do, this data dot map, basically this map when you do for every data, right? This data is an array. For every data we will be getting the index, and then what is the item we have in the data, right? So we have multiple data, right? So you have, this is one data, this is next data, this is next data. So for each data, this loop will run. Okay. So first the index will be 0. I want to print the index as 1, right? Here I want to print the index as 1. So I am printing index plus 1. This is nothing but a this is a table head. This is also table. This is all table data. Right? This is also table data, right? This part. Okay. And then next concept, the first thing you have to display the, sorry. So then you have to display the name, email ID, contact number, and you have to display this buttons, right? So in the item dot, right here you are mapping on the item and index. In the item dot name, we will get the name. In the item dot email, we get the email. In the item dot contact, we will get the contact. And this is how this got displayed. Okay. And then what you are displaying? We have to display the update button. We have to display the update button is there. Then delete button is there. So update button is there. Here you are displaying the delete button. And then we are displaying the button. 3 buttons are there. Right. So this is done. And then what happens? Again, after displaying that, again this loop will come. We'll go to the next item, right? And the next item will get displayed. These items are coming from data.map. Data is coming from the HTTP response, which we collected from the database. Okay. So for the next item is getting displayed. Again, after displaying all these things, loop will go here. Again, we'll display the item. Right. So when I click delete, right, this delete contact on click, this function will be called. This delete contact item will delete the item. Okay. So the crux is, what you need to understand here is, when I send a HTTP request, the HTTP request goes to the React server, because React server listens on 3000. So React server, what it does, the React server finally finds the route in the app.js, and then it calls this home function. In the home function, we are framing the HTML content. The complete content we have to display, right? That HTML content we are framing here. And this content is what the home is returning. Right? This home function, that is what is returning. So that will come here. Basically, this content will again get returned. This will return to the app here. And this content is what will be rendered. Where it will be rendered? It will be rendered to the ID root. This ID root is there in the index.html. Right? This is how it works. So while processing this, there will be some data which we have to display here and which is there in the database. So for that, we have to send a HTTP request to the backend server to get the information from the database. And that we are doing using the use effect. Using the use effect, in the use effect, we are calling a load data. In the load data, we are sending the HTTP request to the backend server 5000 using the AXOS module. We are sending a get HTTP request. This returns us all the data. That data we are setting in the state variable data, so that the component re-renders and our data in the database is also getting displayed. We are putting the data from the database also in the HTML content, and that is how it got displayed. When we click this localhost 3000, it generates our browser, right? So our browser generates a HTTP request. Right? It generates a get HTTP request. This request is processed by a web server only. Which web server will process? The web server which is running in localhost. Localhost is our PC, and which is listening in 3000. Right? This is 3000. So this is nothing but our React server. So in React there is a web server. Whenever we start a React application, a web server runs. So it comes to this web server, right? And then what this React application does, it sees the URL, and then what it does, it again generates another HTTP request using this AXOS.get. It again generates another HTTP request to localhost 5000. Okay, there is another server which is also running in the same PC, localhost 5000. What this server does is gets a HTTP request and then it sends a query to our MySQL database. It does a select star from contact and it gets the data, and then in the response it sends the data here. So data comes here. What our React application does is, whatever data it gets, it sets the state variable for the functional component. Right? So the data is set in the state variable and our particular component will re-render. Now we have got the data from the database. So that component, it will display this button, it will display all the values. This data and all, whatever data it got from the database, it displays here. This is the complete working of how when you type this localhost 3000, this is what happens. So here one HTTP request goes and here another HTTP request goes. So HTTP request can be processed by only a web server, and that is the important point you need to understand.